Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me here to provide industry perspective on the discussion of Brexit, and then more particularly the perspective of the European automotive industry. So let's see whether if I can get my perhaps first slide. Yes, here we are. Okay, good. First, a few words about the organization on whose behalf I'm standing here in front of you. ASEA brings together 15 of the leading manufacturers of passenger cars, trucks and buses, Europeans as well as non-Europeans based in Europe, investing in production and research in Europe. Okay? And so when we add, before starting and giving you some perspective on what the implications could be of Brexit for the automotive industry, just a few facts and figures about the automotive industry and its importance in Europe. I mean, when you talk European automotive industry, you talk about 12.6 million jobs, which equals 5.7% of the EU overall employee population. When you look just at manufacturing, I mean, the automotive industry provides jobs to more than 3 million people, which equals almost 11% of all jobs in manufacturing in the European Union. The industry does a lot in research and development, and I think what is important to add that is that the European automotive industry has continued to produce more than they sell in Europe, so they are in fact adding to a positive trade balance for the European of around 90 billion euro. Okay? And that is by the fact that all these manufacturers are also investing outside Europe. Now, when you look at the trade between the UK and the rest of Europe, the 27 member states, because that's what we talk about, here are some of the figures. If you look at the export of the 27 member states in Europe to the UK, and these are figures of last year, 2016, you see that last year, 2.4 million vehicles were exported to the UK, which is almost 1/3 of the exports within Europe. If you look at UK exports to the rest of Europe, that's kind of almost 1 million units worth 16 billion euros, which equals 43% of all the exports from the UK. And that's the left column. That's talking finished products. It's vehicles. The right column talks about parts and components of vehicles. That's another business, you could say. And what you conclude from this picture is that, frankly, the trade flows between UK and the rest of Europe are very much integrated. Frankly, it doesn't matter whether you produce in Europe only or in the UK only, you're going to be affected wherever you are. Because those producing in the UK are buying lots of parts and components from suppliers in continental Europe, and those producing in Europe, in continental Europe, are buying lots of components and parts from UK suppliers. I mean, let's look at some more specifics. Here are figures, just UK only, again, and it underlines the importance of the automotive industry is one of the big sectors which is going to be affected by Brexit because of the fact that the business model in our industry is so intensively linked to Europe as a whole. Okay. So here again, if you look at some of the numbers, UK exports to the rest of the European Union, you see more than half of the passenger cars built in the UK are being exported. Okay. When you look only at commercial vehicles, that's trucks, buses, vans, it's even 90% of all those produced in the UK are exported. 6.3% of all cars sold in the 27 EU member states were manufactured in the UK. If you look at it the other way around, you see even bigger figures. 69% of all cars sold in the UK were manufactured in the rest of Europe, in EU 27. And then, of course, the obvious question is, which countries are more affected in the 27 EU member states? And here you have some more figures. Those who export more to the UK than import from the UK. Top of the bill is Germany, followed by Spain. Third one is France. Fourth is Belgium. Fifth, the Czech Republic. Those are all markets exporting more to the UK than they import from the UK. Okay. And this is not parts and components. We talk about finished vehicles. If you look at it the other way around, there are indeed also countries in the 27 who import more from the UK than they export to the UK. And these countries, it starts with the Netherlands, which is a big importer from the UK, followed by Ireland, Sweden, Denmark, and Italy as number 5. I thought that in this discussion it's useful to come up with some facts and figures, and it shows you how far-going the implications will be. And that is just trade. Now let me talk manufacturing. Today, vehicle manufacturers operate more than 300 assembly and production plants across the European continent, 34 of which are in the United Kingdom. Now, and I want to show you a little video to illustrate that when we talk about importing components, parts and components for the production of a vehicle, it is not a black and white story where you can just say, oh, if I'm producing a vehicle in France, I just import component A, B, and C from the UK. The business reality is much more complex. Let's see the next video.
Making one of the company's engine blocks typically involves it going on a whirlwind trip around Europe as it undergoes various machining and treating processes. It starts life being cast at the facility in Bridgenall and after 5 days makes its first journey to Italy, where the initial machining of the block takes another 5. From there, it's sent to Germany to spend 4 days being coated. Then it's back to Italy for final machining and assembly, a 10-day process. Once more to Germany for 3 days of honing before returning to the UK for 2 days for cleaning and final inspection. Then the finished engine block is delivered to the vehicle manufacturer's plant in France. A journey of around 30 working days involving 6 border crossings.
So, I just wanted to use this video to illustrate the complexity of what we talk about in our industry, and of course I can imagine it must be similar to other sectors. So automotive manufacturing is highly complex, and again the video illustrated that. A single vehicle part may be composed of over 30 components, and in turn each component can undergo up to 100 process steps to become a finished product. So it may pass through 15 countries, crossing borders multiple times. And if you know that a single engine, or no, a single motor vehicle consists of around 30,000 parts, you can already imagine how many trade floors are behind the production of one single vehicle. Currently, of course, with the single market, all this went flawless. No controls at the borders, no customs formalities to comply with. We were able to go for just-in-time delivery systems, no extra costs, no extra tariffs. So we are currently a highly integrated industry, and it is really reflected in how this whole industry is set up across its supply chain, the production sites, the distribution networks. And we can say that today, UK and the EU are closely integrated, both from an economic point of view, regulatory point of view, as well as a technical point of view. So what is going to be the impact of Brexit? Okay. So clearly, I don't have a crystal ball. And it's not us industry to decide. We need to respect the outcome of the negotiations. It's going to be up to the negotiators. Yet, we can already anticipate now that Brexit will or risk to have an adverse impact on automotive manufacturers and suppliers in the 27. In the UK, it could affect industrial competitiveness of the companies on both sides of the channel and European economy at large. And here are the key concerns on the potential implications of Brexit for us. I mean, we look at it from three angles: access to each other's market, regulatory framework, and access to labor, elements which have been touched upon in earlier interventions. Let's start with access to each other's markets. If UK leaves the single market without any measures to replace the current system, we are going to have an issue when it comes to free circulation and tariff-free flow of goods between the EU27 and the UK. So, if there's no deal in place, here's what could happen. And the tariffs which we mention here are WTO-inspired tariffs. That would mean all of a sudden from 0 on passenger cars, we would go to 10% when you export to the UK or import into Europe. For commercial vehicles, which means trucks, buses, vans, this could go up to 22%, according to WTO. And for parts and components, the tariffs are a bit lower. The other element, which should not be underestimated, is the border checks. If the UK tomorrow is no part of the European Union anymore, we all risk to face customs formalities again, customs checks and controls at the borders. First of all, it still needs to be set up, because it hasn't, and it is not in place today. But obviously, what we are already afraid of, that is, will lead to extra time and extra cost for manufacturers. It will also trigger the risk of congestion at ports, which we currently do not have. That's the first issue, access to market, where, again, the biggest issues are tariffs and customs formalities. Second is the regulatory framework. Now, currently, the automotive industry, which is heavily regulated, is submitted to one set of rules across the European Union. Example would be type approval, how cars are being homologated. Today, if a car is homologated in the UK, for instance, Jaguar Land Rover producing Jaguars or Land Rovers in the UK, get homologated in the UK, these can be freely exported into the other 27 member states without having to go through an extra homologation or system. The same for cars in continental Europe. Once homologated in the Netherlands, homologated in Germany, these cars can be freely exported to the UK. Tomorrow, is this going to still happen? If we are having to comply with different rules in the UK versus continental Europe? Big question marks. Even if we hear that some of the European regulations currently in place would be adopted in the UK, this will, of course, only happen at a certain point in time. What afterwards? If those legislations, these European rules change, that means, will these changes also still apply in the UK or not? Yeah. And this is going to be important for some of the new legislations or new legislative proposals which are currently on the table. You know, the whole type approval and homologation system for cars is currently being revised. So which rules will apply after Brexit? The old rules or the new rules? End of the year, European Commission plans to come up with new rules on CO2 emissions for targets. Which ones will apply in the UK? The old rules or the new rules? Big question mark. Research and development, UK currently is an active member of different research programs, such as Horizon 2020, facilitating cross-border R&D cooperation. What will happen with those programs, and what will be the role of the UK in the future? Okay. And I mentioned already the CO2 targets discussion. One could even ask the question, if tomorrow the UK will no longer be part of the European Union, the targets that the industry needs to meet on CO2 in 2021, will they take into account sales in the UK or not? It all depends whether the UK will still be part of the European Union by that time, but following the timeline, we normally would expect that the UK would be already out. A lot of questions in the industry which just keep confusing us. Last point, access to labor. Like other manufacturers, auto manufacturers rely on free movement of people for access to skills and expertise of Europe's workforce. At least 10% of the people employed in the UK automotive manufacturing sector are coming from somewhere else in the EU. What will be the impact when the free flow of people is no longer guaranteed? So, by way of conclusion, I hope I was able to make clear that for us in the automotive industry, we are fully integrated. And for the moment, clearly, borders do not count. We just look at the economics of things. And so far, everybody has benefited from that. You need to know that automotive manufacturers usually operate in 4 to 7 year product cycles, which require long-term business planning. So again, the uncertainty around Brexit doesn't help investment planning, especially not in the UK. Stable legal and regulatory framework is imperative to take decisions on these future investments and, of course, also to safeguard the competitiveness of our industry. So I just wanted to use this forum to say there is concern in the automotive industry, concern which we have shared with both the UK government as well as the negotiators on the EU side, because uncertainty is not good for business. And so it will be crucial, especially to bridge the gap between the UK's withdrawal from the EU and the entry into force of a new agreement between the EU27 and the UK. And the irony is that we are talking about this at the same time that Europe is negotiating a free trade agreement with Japan. So we're going to have this interesting situation that while we are breaking up the 27 member states and the UK, that at the same time we are talking about bringing together Europe and Japan and then allowing the Japanese automotive manufacturers to import tariff-free vehicles from Japan. This is, in our opinion, very ironic. And so let's hope that reason will prevail in the discussions on Brexit, because at the end of the day, we look and continue to look at the UK as part of Europe when it comes to the automotive industry. Thank you for your attention.